Hello, junkies. Welcome to Nocturnal Throwback, the re-podcast of the original 2007 podcast where I wrote a chapter each week and podcast it each week of the book that would eventually become the hardcover horror thriller from Crown Publishing known as Nocturnal. Cool things going on in the world of Siglerism. Right now we have the G-Smote tournament going on over in our weekly Sigler in Place live streams. That's the greatest sports movie of all time tournament. 32 amazing sports movies are in that. We do that live stream every Tuesday and Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, 1 a.m. GMT. And you can watch live at facebook.com/Scott Sigler, twitch.tv/Scott Sigler, youtube.com/Scott Sigler. And of course, if you can't make it to one of our live streams that are full of fan interaction and lots of Siglerism news and general goofiness, all kinds of fun things, the streams are always saved at those same locations so you can come back the next day, days after. It doesn't matter. You can come back and watch it as you please. My novel, Aliens Phalanx, is nominated for a Dragon Award for the Best Media Tie-In Novel. Go to bit.ly, that's bit.ly/Phalanx Dragon with no spaces. Register there and vote. Don't cost nothing. It's super free. Helps out the cause over here in the world of Siglerism. Again, that's bit.ly/Phalanx, PHALANX Dragon, DRAGON. No spaces between Phalanx and Dragon. That is it for the 2020 version of What's Happening Now. Let's jump in the Wayback Machine and see what was happening back in 2007 and 2008. Here is the talkie talk from the long ago time, then episode number 29 of Nocturnal Throwback. Enjoy. Welcome to the podcast novel Nocturnal. This is episode number 29. Nocturnal is a podcast-only novel you can't buy in stores and you can't peek at the end. Written and performed by Scott Sigler. More information and more free stories available at scottsigler.com. This book contains adult language, mature situations, and lots of violence. Hello there, junkies. I am back from the secret mission of Death Writing Retreat. Things went very well in the 10 days that I was gone, and I'll give you a full update on that after episode 29 of Nocturnal. I'll also address some of the comments on scottsigler.com about going a few weeks without an episode and some of the comments about all the bitching about Infected coming through the RSS. That's right, Rabbit. We're going to have us a nice rant. In episode 29, Dr. Stonemason, and yes, that's his real name, talks about the Punnett Square he set up for Marie's children. If you want to know what that looks like and you want to follow along with all the crazy mixed up genetic action, then go to scottsigler.com. Look at episode 29 for Nocturnal, and you'll be able to see it right there. I'll be back after the episode for that rant, but for now, let's go into a nice, extended story so far so I can get you caught up since I've been gone for so long. San Francisco police detectives Bryan Clauser and Pookie Chang have been investigating a series of murders. They suspect these murders are committed by Marie's Children, a shadowy cult that has existed in the San Francisco area for centuries. Most of the victims fell into two categories, either organized crime figures or someone associated with high school sophomore and social outcast Rex Depravdichuk. Investigation of the murders linked to Depravdichuk led Bryan and Pookie to a man named Marco Gastineau, who was slain right in front of them by a cloaked bowman firing from a rooftop 4 stories up and across the street. That bowman turned out to be Jebediah Erikson, also known as the Saviour, a shadowy figure that stalked and killed Marie's children. A confrontation with Erikson put the man in the hospital and let Bryan and Pookie see Erikson's basement full of stuffed monstrosities. These monsters turned out to be real, not fakes, and they knew that Marie's Children was much more than just a cult. Genetic analysis determined that these monsters, as well as the killers in the Depravdichuk murders, all had the same mother. One other person had that mother, Bryan Clauser. Discovering that his whole life was a lie, he confronted the man claiming to be his father. Not getting the answers he needed, Bryan visited Alder Jessup, the man who made the weapons for the Saviour. When Jessup learned that Saviour was in the hospital, he said they had to save him or Marie's Children would surely kill him in that bed. Alder and his grandson Adam prepared to arm Bryan and send him into the hospital to rescue Saviour. Meanwhile, Bryan's girlfriend, Robin Hudson, and her mentor, Dr. Stone Mason, worked on further genetic analysis of Marie's children. Stone discovered that Robin had been doing drugs to stay awake and pursue the case. He sent her back to her apartment to rest while he finished the analysis, with a promise that he would call as soon as the results came in. A Marie's child named Tard understood that with Saviour in the hospital, soon to be dead, Tard could act out his homicidal fantasies, which he did in Golden Gate Park, killing a pair of teenage lovers. Rex turned out to be the prophesied leader of Marie's children. He renamed them the Nocturnals and set out on a plan to take over all the organized crime in San Francisco. Rex has a dream where his people can walk the night streets hunting their ancient prey, humanity. Frank Lanza is the leader of the San Francisco La Cosa Nostra. He once used Marie's children as a secret death squad to take out his enemies. Now he finds himself on the other end of that relationship, forced to do what Rex tells him. Rex wants a meeting between Lanza and Dmitry Vasilov, leader of the Russian mob. There's only one problem. No one knows where Vasilov is. After a failed attempt on Lanza's life, Vasilov has gone into hiding. At her house, San Francisco Chief of Police Amy Zoe had a brutal run-in with Rex and his two monstrous protectors, Pierre and Sly. Pierre killed Amy's husband right in front of her and promised the same treatment for her twin daughters unless Zoe could arrange a meeting between the mafia and the Russian mob. Rex said the meeting had to be on a ship, and he said it had to be very soon. And now, episode 29 of Nocturnal. Robin laid in her bed, waiting for the phone to ring. She had the covers pulled up to her chin, the phone under her pillow, trying to relax and failing miserably. Emma was on top of the covers, half of her big body resting across Robin's chest. Every minute or so, Emma would lift her head up and look at Robin's face, as if to make sure Robin was really there. Once she had visual confirmation, Emma would sneak out 2 or 3 kisses, then put her head back down. Even with the twitchy shakes, being in her own bed, doing nothing but petting her dog, well, it felt like heaven. The cell phone buzzed. She reached under the pillow and answered before the second ring. Hello?
Robin, it's Stone. How are you feeling?
Tired and jittery all at the same time.
Good. You deserve it. But stay awake for a few more minutes. The test results are back. The puzzle is complete. It's a wild tale to be sure, but it's complete. With the samples that Bryan brought us and the dog creature, I've got it all.
Okay, hit me.
First, that lovely household pet. Quite a bit of genetic information in that, 'cause it's trisomal.
XYZ, like Rex?
No, it's something else entirely. It's ZZY.
2 Zs.
Correct, 2 Zs. And with its crazy physiology, seems pretty safe to say the Z has all kinds of genetic information that we can't even begin to guess at.
How about the stuff from the blanket?
The tissue on the blanket produced 2 genotypes, XYZ, like our young Mr. Depravdichuk, and another trisomal combination, ZZ Top.
What? ZZ Top? What the hell is that?
It's an American blues rock band, popular in the 80s.
I can't believe you went there.
Couldn't help myself. Anyway, the other trisomal combination is ZZX.
ZZX? What the hell is that?
It's the mother. The XYZ I got from some small black hairs in the blanket. Those are from the baby. The ZZX was produced by blood in the afterbirth. It's from the mother. And thanks to those combinations, I've completed the Punnett square.
Completed it?
Absolutely. We have all the info now. No one has ever seen anything like this. A species with a partially trisomal chromosome. I put the chart together, and it all makes sense now. The math adds up. Look, in normal humans, the father can give an X or a Y. And since the mother has 2 X chromosomes, she can only give an X.
I might have learned that in a science class or 2.
You're the one who's doing drugs, and you're insinuating you're too smart for this information?
Robin winced. Touché, teacher. Touché.
Shall I continue?
Please do, Robin said, and scooched Emma's ear.
So with normal human reproduction, 1 chromosome from each parent, you get 4 possible combinations. XX, XX, XY, or XY. Since 2 of those come out the same, you can really only get 1 of 2 combinations, XX or XY. But with this species, you can get 9 combinations. 10 if you count the fact that it looks like unfertilized eggs can start to develop.
You're shitting me.
Not at all. I found 13 eggs with nothing but a Z chromosome. 2 of them looked like they started to split on their own, but they were both dead.
Okay, so take me back to the possible genotypes.
Well, for a pothead, this might be complicated, so try and pay attention.
It wasn't Potstone, it was Benny's.
The female, the queen, that's the ZZX. She gives off a single chromosome, either an X or a Z.
Can the mother give off 2 chromosomes?
It doesn't look like it,
Stone said.
There were multiple eggs in the afterbirth fluid. 2 were the developing ones that died. All the eggs had only 1 chromosome, either a Z or an X.
So the double chromosome gamete, the non-disjuncture that results in trisomal organisms, that all comes from the male. When we tested Rex's sperm, it was always ZX, ZY, or XY.
Right. That's where this thing gets interesting. The queen can produce Zs from a single X or Y gamete donated by sperm from a normal human male, resulting in either ZX or ZY, right?
Right.
That's where our regular Zs, if you can call them that's where they come from. We know this woman actually does mate with normal men. That can produce offspring that are ZX or ZY. You could also get an XY or an XX if the queen donates an X instead of a Z. That makes for 4 possible combinations.
ZX, ZY, XX, and XY.
Right, but if she mates with one of these trisomal males, all hell breaks loose. You get a possibility of 5 combinations from that mating. You can get a ZZY like the dog creature. I'm going to call that an abomination. You could get a ZXX, which we haven't seen yet, so I don't know what to call it. You could get XXY, which would probably be a human with Klinefelter syndrome. But here's where it gets really interesting. Only if the queen mates with someone like Rex, an XYZ, could you get another XYZ. And more importantly, that's the only way you could get another ZZX.
So if Rex mates with the ZZX queen, then...
That's right. If Rex mates with this unknown woman, they could produce more queens.
Whoa, Robin said. I guess we better find that kid.
Or find the mother, the queen, although I don't know if she's broken any laws.
Aside from the laws of nature, you mean?
Quite. I ran the mitochondrial DNA and it's a match. Whoever gave birth to the baby wrapped in that blanket also gave birth to Marco Gastineau, Kyle Solar's killer, Alex Panos' killer, and to the sources of those other 2 samples you gave me.
The brown shirt?
That's right. The brown shirt was ZY, by the way, same as Gastineau.
Wow, Robin said. Well, that's all of them. The vial of blood was the same genetic code as the baby hair, right?
No, the blood did not match the baby hair.
What? But Bryan said the blood was from the baby.
Then either he's mistaken or he's lying. The blood is XYZ, like the baby and like Rex. But the Z chromosome looks to be damaged. It has the 2 centromeres, but the last piece of the Z is mostly gone. It's just a little stub. So in the blood sample, it's an XYZ, but it's missing information that is found in the genome of the baby and of Rex.
What could that missing piece code for?
Honestly, Robin, I just completed a Punnett square. I didn't run a full genome sequence and invent behaviors to assign to every protein.
Right, Robin said. Sorry.
So there's the scoop. Now try and get some sleep. I want you back here tomorrow.
Stone, we have regular work to do there, you know? Police cases and stuff.
Well, that's fine. I have all the information and samples I need right now. We can move everything to my lab. You'll have to take a leave of absence, of course.
I can't do that.
Well, then it's the same thing as working 2 jobs. We're talking Nobel Prize here, girl. We're talking books, a lecture circuit. Maybe Al Gore wants to whore out another cause to make a buck off gullible people. The possibilities are endless.
Oh my, you're giving me a headache.
That's not a headache, honey. That's the DTs. Sleep and call me in the morning.
Sasha Sammy Berzin just didn't know what the hell to do. He wasn't cleared to handle the media. And thanks so much, dear media, for finding the bodies first. Pictures of 2 corpses missing their hands would be all over the front page of the Chronicle the next day. Hell, it was probably already up on their website. Some bum found the bodies. A bum being the first one to find something in Golden Gate Park? Who'd have thunk it? Maybe the bum was crawling into the tangle of Australian tea trees to sleep. Maybe just to take a crap and leave it, as San Francisco bums love to do so much. What he got was more than a number 2. A pair of dead teenagers. Their hands cut off, their necks broken, and their feet gnawed. Gnawed, for God's sakes. Were the hands eaten also? Who knew? Well, they weren't here. And that made Sammy damn nervous, because missing body parts usually meant one of 2 things. The mafia sending a message directly related to a specific transgression, or it meant a trophy. and trophies usually meant serial killers. The dead boy was 17 and the dead girl was 16. They still had their IDs and plenty of money on them. Judging by their ages, somehow, Sammy didn't think they were tied up with the mob. The curly, gnarled tree provided the killer a secluded place to both stalk the kids and to do what he wanted after dragging them in. It also provided a great place to put up blue plastic that could keep out the cameras and the press. A dozen uniforms were outside that blue plastic, keeping the media at bay. But what Sammy really needed was someone in authority. Chief Zoe, not answering her phone, and no one knew where she was. Sub-Chief Robertson? He answered and told Sammy he was too busy, so Sammy could handle it. Too busy. Was he fucking kidding? Sammy thought he had a serial killer on his hands, and Robertson was too busy. A flap in the blue plastic lifted up, and a uniformed cop poked his head inside. "Sir, more media is showing up. We got CBS 4 setting up now, Crown TV van is pulling up on Martin Luther King Drive, and the ABC 7 Eye in the Sky chopper is closing in." "Just get all the media back," Sammy said. "The last thing we need is for them to start asking questions about a serial killer, you know?" Might be too late for that, sir." "What? How do you know that?" "I think they already have a name for him. They asked me if I knew anything about the handyman." Sammy shook his head. He'd been on the scene for only a couple of hours, and the media had already defined this as a serial killer and given him a fancy serial killer name. This was already getting out of control. This just wasn't his friggin' job. "Just push them back," he said. "We've got enough pictures. We need to get these bodies out of here and back to the morgue." Frank Lanza waited in his basement office, right by his phone. He really didn't know what else to do. His men had cleared out the body of Tony Fourballs Gillum. The place still smelled of blood, and a little bit of Sean Robertson's piss, even though Frank had Robertson's chair removed. Poor Tony. What a way to go. Things were going to hell in a handbasket. Frank knew he'd lost control completely and utterly. That little kid had the upper hand. Frank would have to see this thing through. Marie's children could get to him at any time. He knew that. He could run, go back to the East Coast with his tail between his legs, live off the scraps thrown to him by others for the rest of his days. Well, fuck that. He was a Lanza. San Francisco belonged to him. He would die before he'd turn his back on his birthright, on his family name. As long as Rex came through on his end, as long as he got rid of the Russians, then everything would work out. Frank didn't like the idea of being bait, but Rex was right. There was no other way to draw Dmitry Vasilov out into the open. His cell phone rang. He actually looked at his desk phone for a second, wondering if his ears had confused things, if the black plastic thing with no dial was ringing, and that meant that Rex and Sly and Pierre or some other fucking monstrosity was in the tunnel that led into the office. Then the cell phone rang again. Frank shook his head once, hard, to get his focus back, and answered. "This is Lanza."
Pier 45,
the woman said.
"Tonight, 2 a.m. You and all your lieutenants, unarmed, all of you."
The voice sounded familiar to him. She sounded hateful, furious yet cool and collected, like she was barely containing a scream of murderous rage. "Who is this?"
"Be there, Lanza, or it's gonna go bad for you."
"Chief Zoe?" No answer. "Wow, the kid has you in his pocket too? He moves fast."
"Don't worry about him. You just worry about me. Because if you aren't there, Lanza, if you aren't where I told you to be at 2 a.m., then you can take my word for it that the kid will be the least of your worries."
His experience with Amy Zoe was limited, but he knew she did not bullshit. Frank wanted to talk to Sean Robertson, find out what he knew.
"I'm not going to say it twice, you piece of garbage. If you aren't there, you're dead by the time the sun rises. Last chance. Are you going to be there with all hands, yes or no?"
"Yes," Lanza said. "You can be sure that
I'll be frisking you all myself. If I find a weapon, I'm going to use it on your genitalia. Guns, knives, brass knuckles, you name it. Make sure you tell your boys that bit of information, because if I'm shooting someone's dick off, I want them to know whose fault it is."
The phone clicked as Zoe hung up. First Rex, now the San Francisco chief of police. Frank stared at the phone for a second, stunned that his horrible situation had somehow become even more precarious. Then he started dialing. He had to make sure his lieutenants were ready on time. Poor Gabriel Pinto. The dude never really hurt anyone. Not unless you count that one fight in the 3rd grade with his best friend Paul Tatatumo. They got into it over the Power Rangers of all things. Which was the best Power Ranger? Gabriel said red. Paul said blue. The discussion escalated, as things often do among boys. And the next thing you know, Gabriel reared back and smacked Paul in the face with his Spider-Man Trapper Keeper. That was the whole fight. Gracie versus Hughes it was not. Paul's nose bled all over the place. Gabriel felt really awful, and kind of turned in his violence card right there on the spot. He did some track and field in high school because he could run forever in a day, but he avoided the contact sports like football and wrestling. Not that those things would have helped him in the end. Gabriel graduated high school, barely, and college wasn't really an option for him. His uncle got him a job as a night janitor at the Telegraph Hill precinct of the San Francisco Police Department. Gabriel liked the work just fine. Job was easy, save for when the loonies had to use the crapper and found new ways to fling poo. Gabriel worked the job for 7 years, got along fine with the cops, but finally decided he didn't much like the constant noise. When an opening came up at the morgue, Gabriel snatched it. For the next 3 years, he showed up at the morgue at 10 p.m., checked in, did his trash hauling, cleaning, and mopping for 8 hours, then checked out at 6 a.m. Not a bad life, really. In fact, he loved his life, right up to the moment where he lost it. Gabriel Pinto swiped in at 9:55 p.m., a respectful 5 minutes early at a facility that mostly shut down around 7. Rarely was there a need for an emergency autopsy, and thanks to refrigeration, bodies brought in at night kept just fine until the morning. Gabriel swiped in, waited for the electronic lock to open, took one step through the door, and never even saw the baseball bat that would kill him. The Louisville Slugger SL88W TPX Warrior Senior League Baseball Bat retails for about $80. You can get them at just about any sports store. You can pay cash. No background checks, no fingerprints. And yet, with a proper swing, a major league hitter can deliver 8,000 pounds of force against a baseball. Or about the same amount against a human skull. Gabriel never saw the bat that fractured his skull and drove it forward so hard his brain hit the inside of the back of his skull, rebounded, then hit the inside of the front of his skull. He was on the ground before he knew he'd been hit. The blow caused fatal hemorrhaging that would take his life 20 seconds later. For 10 of those 20 seconds, however, Gabriel remained oddly lucid and felt quite at peace. He saw what looked like 3 homeless guys, one normal size, one very tall, and one a huge, humped-back thing, sweep into the morgue's entryway. The homeless guys all wore blankets over their shoulders and heads. They closed in on Louis, the front door guard, before Louis even had time to draw his gun. Gabriel saw the baseball bat hit Louis in the face. As Louis went down, Gabriel put 2 and 2 together and realized that same bat had probably hit him in the back of the head. It was the last logical thought he'd have. Gabriel watched the 3 homeless guys rush through the inside door that led to where they did the autopsies. The door shut, and Gabriel Pinto faded away. Stonemason finished packing his briefcase with all the samples and copies of all the reports. All of this was going to make he and Robin filthy rich. The first modern subspecies of humanity, trisomial reproduction strategy, a new chromosome that held untold amounts of new genetic information. Any 3 of these things would put them on the map. All of those together. And hello, Larry King, could I put you on hold for a second? Because I've got the Nobel Laureate Committee on line 1. As soon as the door to the autopsy center flew open, Stonemason knew he was fucked. 3 shambling mounds strode in. The lead one, the tallest of the 3, holding a bloody baseball bat. They wore blankets and big coats, probably to try and look like street bums. Stone realized a lot of things in that split second. First, he was absolutely, positively about to die. Second, that these were walking Zeds. And third, that the Z chromosome held far more information than he could have ever imagined. The lead bum closed in on him in a flash, grabbed his right hand, put it palm down on a stainless steel table, then smashed it with the bat. Stone screamed in pain. The bum lifted him, effortlessly, by the throat. Stone found himself staring into a face covered with black fur and dominated by two penetrating black eyes.
"Where is the woman?"
the bum said in a voice that was most certainly not human.
"Robin, is she here, or did she go home?"
Home! She's gone!
"Are you lying?"
God, I was lying. Wouldn't I also lie about lying? Kind of a stupid question, don't you think?
Stone heard the other bums rummaging about the autopsy center. Some opening doors, some body trays sliding out, and the clacking of computer keys. One of the bums called out something. Stone thought they said something like they had everything they needed, but he didn't really hear the words, A, because his hand was broken in about 15 places, and B, because he had a gigantic, fur-faced bum asking him questions. But he got the gist. The fur-faced bum laid Stone down on the stainless steel table. He then reached down and came up with Stone's briefcase.
"Is this yours?"
The creature asked. Stone nodded.
Yeah, take it. Can we please get this over with? My hand really hurts. I've never been that good with pain.
The creature smiled.
"Of course. Any last words?"
Fuck my hand. Yeah, your breath smells like shit.
The creature pulled out a cell phone of all things. He hit the 2-way button and said,
"She's in her apartment. Take her."
Got it.
A voice 2-wayed back. The creature lifted the bloody aluminum bat so Stone could see the label. Stone wondered if a Louisville Slugger SL88W TPX was a good bat. He hoped so. It would suck to be killed with some Kmart Blue Light special. The bat went up, the bat came down, and Dr. Stone Mason, yes, that's his real name, was no more. Bryan had never really thought a station wagon could be sweet. When he saw that the Jessup station wagon was a black Dodge Magnum, he almost changed his mind. When Alder Jessup showed him the arsenal in the back, well, he knew he'd been wrong. Adam Jessup drove. Were the situation not so surreal and desperate, Bryan would have said Adam Jessup drove like a fucking idiot. But the situation was surreal and desperate, so he let it slide. Alder Jessup sat on the right side of where the back seat used to be in a custom captain's chair. The man was short. A captain's chair in a station wagon actually worked for him. Bryan also sat in a captain's chair on the left side, and it most certainly did not work for him. His head bumped up against the Magnum's roof. The chair spun, however, which let him turn, face the back, and open the metal boxes that Alder tapped with his cane. It was like a Christmas for Hollywood action heroes. "This one," Alder said, and tapped a box about the size of a full paper grocery bag lying on its side. Bryan opened it. He reached in and picked up a flat, black Fabrique National 5.7, the same handgun they'd found in Erikson's basement. "Jesus, you realize that having us in a moving vehicle is a crime, right?" "If you find a cop that's not suspended, feel free to turn me in," Alder said. The box also contained another FN, a holster designed to hold both guns flat against the small of his back, and a dozen loaded magazines. Bryan pulled out the holster and started strapping it on. He loaded each weapon, then slid them into their slots. The barrels pointed towards his ass. The handles pointed out to his sides. He imagined they looked like a flat black steel butterfly back there. "That one," Alder said, tapping a metal rifle case. Bryan opened it to find a USAS 12-gauge semi-automatic shotgun. "Just what every kid wants," Bryan said, "but I can't sneak that into the hospital." Alder nodded. He flipped the lid shut with his cane, then tapped another case the size of a shoebox. Bryan opened it to find a flat black K-bar knife. The knife glinted as the street lights passed by, as if it were covered with metal dust. Bryan ran his finger along the blade, leaving a long, flat black streak free of the glitter. "You'll want to not do that," Alder said. He fished his hand into his coat pocket. "Why?" Bryan said, but even as he said it, he felt his fingertip start to burn. "Because it's poisonous to you," Alder said. He handed Bryan a foil envelope with a yellow label. Preparation H portable wipe. "Clean that off your finger." Bryan tore it open and wiped. "Preparation H? Couldn't you spring for maybe a handy wipe?" "I'm 72, Alder said. While you should be so lucky to reach my age, try to do so without developing a rectum that burns every time you take a crap." "I'll work on that." "We really don't know why it works," Alder said. "In case you haven't figured it out yet, Marie's children, yourself included, heal very quickly. That includes most wounds that would be fatal to a normal man. The silver powder on that knife seems to block the healing ability, allowing a wound that would be fatal to a normal man to be fatal to a Marie's child." Bryan nodded. He remembered the barbs on the arrowhead, designed to stick in a body and not go all the way through. "So why the arrows and knives and shit? Why not just make the bullets out of the material?" "It seems to need to be a powder to spread through the blood and the surrounding tissues or it doesn't work as well," Alder said. "Most powder on a bullet would just burn off in flight. Bullets also have a nasty habit of going through a body and not lodging in place. A hit with one of our broadheads, however, will always stick in the target. The majority of the powder will interact with the bodily fluids, and the powder will stay in the body." "Which is why Saviour went down," Bryan said. Alder nodded. "Back in the days of the original Saviours, someone thought of old myths and tried using silver to kill the beasts. It didn't kill them, but they found those wounds healed much more slowly. After capturing several dozen monsters in the last purge, the Saviours conducted experiments with the help of my grandfather." "Experiments?" "Yeah, they cut 'em up slowly, yo," Adam said from the front seat. "Experimented with different compounds, mixtures, worked on different organs. We still got the sketchbooks at home, yo. Great stuff." Alder tapped a series of boxes. "This is a bow, extra quiver of arrows, stun grenades, spring-loaded wrist knife." Bryan grabbed the last box. "I'm going to be walking down the hall, so the bow is out, and I'm not taking stun grenades into a hospital." He pulled out a contraption that was mostly straps, buckles, and a lethal-looking blade packed in on top of a metal coil. "Show me how to work this." Alder did. "We're almost there, yo," Adam said. Alder opened the next box himself and pulled out a green cloak. He held it forward, a hint of a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "This cloak is the mark of the Saviours. If you survive, we will teach you much, but for now, go forward as one of us." "Gramps," Bryan said, "I'm going into a fucking hospital, not Sherwood Forest." Alder's face screwed into a mask of contempt. "Half an hour ago, I could have shot you as a monster, and now you're a savior, and you won't wear the cloak? Who the hell do you think you are?" "I'm the guy that's not dressing up like Robin Hood. That's who." A black gym bag landed between the captain's chairs. Adam had tossed it back. "I thought you might feel that way, yo," he said. "I brought you something that might be a little more your style." Bryan opened up the gym bag and held up the contents. He smiled. "Yeah, this is more like it." "Preposterous," Alder said. "There's also some stuff in the pockets. And we're here at the hospital. Where do we go?" "Drive around to Vermont Street. I'll walk in through a fire exit or something. I'm not sure yet." "Amateur," Alder said. "Why walk in when you can jump in?" Every city has something like it. There's a lot of streets in any city. A lot of streets, you need a lot of names. And at some point, urban planners just run out of names and give numbers, like First Avenue, or they go with just letters. This particular spot in San Francisco, it's called J Street, and it happens to intersect 3rd Avenue. At this intersection, there's a whole lot of dirt and not much else. This used to be part of Hunters Point Naval Shipyard. That shipyard is now defunct, out of commission, so the corner of J Street and 3rd Avenue is a strange spot indeed. On one side, you've got a view of a dilapidated old warehouse. Turn around 180 degrees, and you have a breathtaking view of the bay. A place with a view like that should be worth millions, but that bit of urban planning hasn't made it through committee. So it's just kind of there. And places that are just there, places with streets that don't even have names, those are often good places to do some really bad shit. The unmarked brown van drove southeast on J Street, past 3rd Avenue, and turned left into a dirt lot that butted up against the warehouse. No one saw it. No one except for Police Chief Amy Zoe, who sat waiting by an unmarked blue Saturn. Yes, that's right. Sometimes unmarked cop cars are a Saturn. Saturns don't turn a lot of heads, which is often the point. She wasn't wearing her immaculate uniform. She wore a brown jacket and blue jeans, sunglasses, and a Giants cap. She wore that blue uniform so much that, dressed like this for a change, her own husband would have had to be within 10 feet of her to recognize her. She wore the strange outfit, and she held her pistol in her right hand. The van pulled up next to the Saturn and stopped. A 50-something man got out. His name was Rich Verdi. He was old school, kicking it in a polyester suit he wore the first day he made detective back in '84. The blue tie was actually sort of new, made in '85 or so, bought at a dollar store for, you guessed it, $1. Someone had bought out an old lot of warehoused clothes, stuff that had never been sold, and wound up in that dollar store. Rich knew damned well that same tie cost about $65 back in 1984. As if you could afford something like that back then on a cop's salary? Well, who had the last laugh? Rich Verdi. That's who. Were you followed? Amy asked. Did you give me a Hummer and a reach around, but I missed it because I was sleeping? Rich asked. What kind of a question is that? A stupid one, Rich said, just like the one you asked. Amy nodded. Not a lot of people could get away with a comment like that, but Rich had two things going for him. Number one, he had saved her life once. That kind of thing buys you a little bit of leeway. Number two, he was delivering two prisoners that he knew damn well might not live out the next 60 minutes. That kind of thing buys you a lot of leeway. Rich jutted his chin at the van. You gonna ditch this thing in the water? Amy shook her head. No, it's gonna sit right here. I've got some gloves to put on them both. Your prints will be all over the van. I'll muss up the steering wheel with the gloves and that's that. Few smudged prints, your prints all over, everything works out. Yeah, that works, Rich said. I leave the Saturn at your place, catch a cab to the hospital. It works for me. Let's get this shit done. 2 hours before I go in, right? That should work. And thanks. This is a big one. Close your eyes. Nah, fuck it, Rich said. I just read that book Fight Club. I want to see this shit coming. And you're welcome. Suit yourself, Amy said. She swung her right hand up at a 45-degree angle. The top of her pistol cracked into Rich's cheek. Ah, fuck, Rich said. The gun had put a nice cut right on the cheekbone. Blood poured down the left side of his face. How'd that look? Amy asked. I don't know. I fucking blinked. Hit me again. Amy swung again. The same sharp, upwards, 45-degree swing. This one caught him in the left temple, cutting him, dropping him to one knee. What the fuck, Chief? What? Do you have to swing so goddamn fast? I didn't see that one either. Now can you please let me count to 3 or something? Fine, stand up. Rich stood. The left side of his face was now covered in blood. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Amy swung again, this time connecting on the left side of his jaw. No cut this time, but Rich held both hands against the latest spot. Fuck, he said. Did you see it that time? Yeah. What did it look like? It looked like someone swinging a gun at my face. Not really all that existential. Fuck, this hurts. Try reading a different book, Amy said. Now get the fuck out of here. I need to take care of this. Rich nodded, climbed into the Saturn, backed out, and drove off down J Street, headed back to the city. Amy watched him go until the taillights vanished. Then she walked to the back of the van to find two men wearing black hoods, sitting on metal benches, handcuffed to a metal rail that ran along the backside of those benches, feet ankle chained to a similar bar on the floor. One of the men lifted his hooded head and seemed to look around. I smell pussy, he said. Amy climbed into the van and hit this man. She'd given Rich love taps, enough to cut the skin, not much more. Rich Verdi was her friend. This piece of shit was not, so she hit him with everything she had. The man slumped back against the van wall. The other man stood still. She pulled off the first man's hood. Jebediah Ivanovich. She pulled off the hood of the other man. Igor, the idiot, Studka. Jebediah was bleeding from the scalp. "What the fuck?" he said, still wincing from the pain. He looked around. From his vantage point, all he could see was the dirt lot and the view of the bay. "Where's the detective? The one with the polyester suit?"
"He got knocked out," Amy said, "right about the time the Italians stole this van and drove you two out here to kill you."
A flicker of worry crossed Jebediah's face. He was no dummy. He knew the situation had changed, and that things could get a lot worse in a hurry. And yet, he still wasn't truly afraid. That was something Amy could fix. "What do you want?"
"I told you what I want. I want Dmitri. I want him right now."
Jebediah shook his head.
"That I cannot do."
Amy turned and shot Igor in the left foot. The man screamed and jerked against his handcuffs and ankle chains, but he wasn't going anywhere. Blood bubbled up from his ruined shoe. Amy rested the gun against her right thigh. She waited.
"I want Dmitri."
Igor let out a noise, kind of like a "Nah!" It struck Amy as the noise a man might make to communicate, if that man had never learned to speak. Igor was telling Jebediah to get with the fucking program.
"But I don't know where he is,"
Jebediah said.
"Something tells me the head of the whole Russian mafia on the West Coast would probably know where he is. So I want you to call him. I want you to call Old Man Zobakov."
Jebediah's face turned white. His bravado gone.
"You cannot ask this of me."
Chief Amy Zoe shot Igor the idiot in the face. His brains splattered the inside wall of the brown van in one long streak. She put the gun back at her side. With her left hand, she pulled out a cell phone.
"You're going to give me a number, and I'm going to dial that number, and Old Man Zobakov will answer, or I will shoot you next."
310-555-2256.
Amy dialed. Someone actually answered on the first ring.
"Zobakov, this is San Francisco Chief of Police Amy Zoe."
"From where did you get this number?"
She looked at Jebediah, who shook his head fiercely.
"I got it from Jebediah Ivanovich," Amy said. "He gave it to me because he wants to help you."
"Does he now?"
"He does. He wants to help you keep me out of Los Angeles, because if I come to your city, it will mean I have lost everything except the desire to destroy. I know much about the law, Zobakov. I don't need to know L.A. to know how to find you there, and how to get rid of you."
"Threats like these are against the law."
"Of course, and I'm saying these things because I know this number would be a temporary cell phone, minutes paid for in advance, the same kind of phone I'm holding now. Neither is tapped, so we can speak freely."
"Please,"
Zobakov said.
"you cannot expect me to believe that a chief of police is going to speak freely of illegal things."
Amy shot Jebediah in the shin. He screamed. She held the phone up so Zobakov could hear him.
"Tell him,"
Amy said.
"The bitch just shot me!"
"Not that, you fucking moron. Tell him about your friend."
"She killed Igor! She just shot him in the face!"
Amy put the phone back to her ear.
"Did you hear that, Zobakov?"
"I did."
"Here's how I can prove you can speak openly. I just shot and killed Igor the idiot Studka. I shot Jebediah in his shin. If this were being recorded, I have implicated myself in murder 1. Do you understand?"
"Yes, I understand. But trust me, you do not want to come to Los Angeles."
"I will come there if I have to. I need something very badly right now. You can give that to me. If I do not get that information, it is your fault. Therefore, I will find you. I will kill you. Even if I fail, I will kill many of your people. Many police officers on the force will help me. We have a code, you see. You worry about the other gangs? You should worry about the largest gang in America, the police."
"I see. What is it you want from me to not come to Los Angeles?"
"I want Dmitri Vasilov on Pier 45 at 2 a.m. tonight. I want him unarmed. I want all of his lieutenants in the San Francisco Bay Area with him. I want them unarmed as well. If any of them fail to show, I'm on my way to Los Angeles. If they're late, I am on my way to Los Angeles.
But I do not know where Dmitri is.
Amy held the phone towards Jennedy. She shot him in the other shin. He screamed very, very loud. She held the phone out for a few seconds before putting it back to her ear.
I'm sure you feel nothing for this pig of a man, Amy said. It's not why I do this. I do this so you will know that I am serious and will not be burdened by the letter of the law. Do you believe me?
I do.
Then make sure Dmitri is there tonight.
I will.
Thank you,
Amy said, and hung up. Jennedy leaned back against the van wall. Lines of snot hung from each nostril. She could see the pain on his face. It must have been quite intense.
You have what you want. Now please, let me go.
This is for all those Asian hookers that you said you fucked,
Amy said. She shot Gennady Ivanovich in the chest 6 times. She shut the van doors, got in the driver's seat, and drove up J Street, heading back into the city, heading for Pier 45. There we go, junkies. We're building up to the big finale that's going to probably take place somewhere in the vicinity of Pier 45 in San Francisco. I'll give you the update on the secret mission of death. I wrote 260 pages of new content. I had set a goal of 50,000 words. I wound up doing 65,000 words. Now, I was in a cabin up in the mountains in California, took my 2 dogs with me. It was really kind of cool, but obviously couldn't do any podcasting. That project is the main priority. We need to get that done as soon as possible, which means that the next Nocturnal episode probably won't be available for about 2 to 3 weeks. Been a lot of bitching on the site about not getting the episodes in a timely fashion. I'm trying to take that as well as I can. People really want the story. They're excited to get the story, and they want to hear how things turn out for Brian and Pookie and everybody else. But every now and then, real life gets in the way of being able to put this thing out every week. A lot of people are poking fun, getting their digs in. That's all good and fine. Some of the people are getting a little bit out of line. I would call them fucking douchebags. Fucking douchebags probably shouldn't be posting comments on the site bitching about a free story that they have gotten nonstop for a long time, and now they go 2-3 weeks without the story. And it's not like the story's going away. It's just delayed. Take a chill pill. Relax. Now, I promised this would be out on Monday, and I'm doing the best I can, but I also have a dog who apparently is in some kind of kidney failure. So she looks like she's on her way out. That is taking priority over everything else right now. That's why you guys didn't get your episode yesterday. And hopefully we'll get that situation rectified one way or another in the next few weeks, and then we can kind of get back on schedule. So for all of you who were taking me to task for not getting the episode out on Monday, I hope you feel horrible about yourselves right now, because I hate you. But then again, I always have hated you. And as for the people who are bitching about the infected episodes coming through the feed, I try and make this as easy as possible because it's really difficult for a lot of people to understand the concept of more than one feed. Podcasting is difficult enough by itself, so I give just one feed. That's feeds.feedburner.com/Scott Sigler. All the stuff comes through there. I re-recorded Infected. It's a much higher quality recording, and there's a ton of new content that wasn't in the previous story. Some people were even bitching about episode 39 and 40, half of which happens to be stuff that was not in the original version. If you don't like Infected, all you have to do is delete the episodes when they come through. It's not that complicated. It's a lot like a remote control. If you don't like the show, turn it off. But a lot of people haven't heard Infected, and then there's another set of people who want to hear the newer version of Infected. Keep in mind that this is the same version, unabridged, that's selling on CD and as a downloadable audio file for something like $30-$40. I'm not sure how much it goes for. I'm giving that away for free. Higher quality recording, new content. There's a lot of great stuff in there. And if you can find a way to bitch about that, then you are completely out of my league when it comes to finding shit to complain about. So more power to you. Those of you who don't mind it, keep listening. You enjoy it, listen. You don't like it, delete the infected episodes. And if it pisses you off that bad, just unsubscribe and you won't have any more stress in your lives. Wouldn't that be a great thing? So I will get back to you with Nocturnal episode number 30 as soon as I can. It looks like it's actually going to wind up being 2 or 3 more episodes. I thought it'd be done by episode 30. Doesn't look like that's going to happen. The story just keeps fattening itself up at the end with a lot of cool stuff. So we'll get that done as soon as we can. As soon as I can tell you what the secret mission of death is, what this new manuscript is, and what it means to all of you, I will do that. But right now, I am muted and can't do it. So catch y'all as soon as I can back on this feed. You have been listening to Nocturnal, written and performed by Scott Sigler. For more information, go to scottsigler.com. All music in this podcast provided by Uncrowned off their album Devils and Angels, available now at the iTunes Music Store.
Is it?